Hi everyone, my name is Stephanie Lee and I'm a clinical psychologist at the Child Mind Institute. We hope that you know by now that we're a national nonprofit that supports children and families with gold standard mental health care, advice, and resources, all online and accessible to everyone. You can learn more about the resources we have available for families during the coronavirus crisis, including telehealth evaluations and treatment by visiting childmind.org/coronavirus. Today, I'd like to talk with you a little bit about getting creative with rewards. I'm going to answer your questions about this and anything else that you're wondering about. So please post your questions in the feed. We'll also post some links to helpful resources on childmind.org and details about the next Facebook Live. Remember, we're here every day at 10 a.m. and 4:30, and we look through your questions daily so that we can help the best that we can. So today we're, as I said, going to be talking just a little bit about getting creative with rewards. This is a topic that I think is very meaningful to a lot of different caregivers who are out there. And interestingly enough, this is something that we talk with parents quite a bit about kind of pre-COVID or pre-crisis. I think that this topic is even more pertinent, even more meaningful, even more relevant for families given the current situation and knowing that we have a lot less resources available to us in terms of rewards. Right? So the very first thing that I want to talk about when we're thinking about rewards for both younger and older kids is the potency and the functionality of that reward, right? So what's incredibly important is when we're thinking about rewarding and reinforcing behaviors, when we're giving our kids a cue or our teenagers a cue that we want to see more of these behaviors, we want to make sure that the reward that we're using is not just meaningful, but is, again, relevant and exciting to them. And so there's a couple different reasons why people do different behaviors. There's really only 4 reasons why anyone does anything. And I'm going to talk about those things just briefly now so that when I'm talking about designing rewards and getting creative with rewards, I can breathe life into these concepts a little bit more. So what we know, again, is there's only 4 functions to behavior. People do things for attention. They do things for tangibles or things. They do things to get out of things or to escape, and then they do things for an internal reason. I'm going to go into it just a little bit more detail. So as I said before, people do things for attention. And if you've watched me on any one of these Facebook Lives previously, you know that I'm going to tell you that people care a little bit less about whether their attention is positive or negative. They truly care about whether it's big, bold, and immediate. So I'm going to go back to that. People care less about whether or not their attention is positive or negative. They care about the intensity of their attention, the proximity with which it was delivered, how long it lasted, and how exciting it was, right? So what we know is that particularly young kids, but teenagers and adults as well, really are looking for exciting input when they do the right thing. So when we think about attention and motivating people, through the use of our attention, we want to think about rewards that are really going to be exciting, meaningful, big, bold, and immediate for someone, right? Another reason why people do things, again, is tangibles. I love kids and families, but if I didn't get a paycheck from Child Mind, I might not get up and go to work each day, or I might do the fun things like Facebook Live, but not write my notes. So what we know is that everyone is motivated to some degree by tangibles. We need to make sure that the tangible is meaningful to the child or to the adolescent or to the adult. So for instance, I love chocolate, but I don't work for chocolate. I only work for money. That's the only tangible that truly is rewarding to me at this point in time. And so what we want to make sure that we're doing is that we're getting kids, we're getting teenagers meaningful tangibles that are going to result in things that they want, whether that be a token towards something that they're going to earn, a tangible that they're going to see in the future, or whether that's an immediate thing that they get right away, a Hershey Kiss or access to screen time, a sticker, if you will. But a sticker is only going to be motivating and rewarding if your kid actually likes stickers, right? So these are things that we need to be checking in about. Escape or delay is another powerful motivator. And what we know is that a lot of kids, adults, and teenagers engage in a behavior to get out of something or to delay something. Think about all the times you tell your kid to come to the table and they say 2 more minutes, 2 more minutes. That little bit of delay can, or that little bit of them getting out of the spinach that they don't want to eat at the dinner table is enough to kind of fuel their behavior. So another reward category that I think parents and caregivers often forget about is allowing your kids to get out of something or giving them some delay or escape, maybe not forever, but in a short time to help them to feel motivated and rewarded for their good behavior. Lastly, we know that people are motivated by sensory input or kind of an automatic reinforcement. So if an itch, I'm going to scratch it. If I get a headache, I'm going to take an Advil. And so we know that a lot of kids and teenagers are motivated by certain items that just make them feel good. And we want to make sure that we're combining tangible rewards with what we know to be sensory needs and desires to make sure, again, that these rewards that we're offering to kids are pertinent, potent, and motivating. We also want to make sure that we don't satiate kids on rewards. And so I know that a lot of parents are struggling with kind of the screen time issue or kind of running out of additional rewards in addition to screen time. And I know that we have some questions coming through that are related to that. So I'm going to jump right into that. But before I do, I just want to make sure I say, again, the best way to create a meaningful reward for your child is to think a little bit about what it is they want, what it is that previous behavior was getting them out of or getting them more attention for, or what tangible were they previously getting, and can we flip the switch? Can we make it that they're now rewarded with that attention or rewarded with that tangible or rewarded with that escape, if that makes sense? So one of the very first questions we have coming in here has to do, again, with screen time. And so screen time, I'm going to read this just verbatim. So screen time used to be a big reward in our house before the lockdown. Now, not so much. I feel like we're losing an important bargaining chip and would like to reset some limits around TV and gaming, but it feels like the genie's out of the bottle. How do we get back, at least to a modified version of the way that things were? This is a really great question, and again, something that I'm talking about constantly with caregivers across the last couple weeks. And what we know is that, anecdotally speaking, a lot of parents are in a position right now where they need to use screen time, or they need to use iPads or extra laptop time, if you will, to their advantage, because they might themselves be in a situation where they are needing to work from home. They need to be doing work with another one of the kids while this child is now on a screen. And so I think it's important for you to think a little bit about the culture of your family and what was the culture of your family prior to the crisis, and what were your rules and restrictions around screen time previously. And then thinking about, if you have a partner, if you have other sets of caregivers, talking this through with them as well to make sure that all the caregivers are on the same page about this topic before any rules, regulations, or new routines are rolled out to a kid or a teenager. So my best advice and my first piece of advice is to get all the adults on the same page about this, so that it doesn't turn out that mom is thinking that screen time during the day isn't a good idea, while dad is thinking, I really need that screen time during the day when I do my video conference at noon. Okay? So that would be the very first thing I recommend, is getting all the adults on the same page. The second thing I would recommend, again, is thinking about what was it like prior, and then how can we kind of adopt some of the previous restrictions or rules in our new norm. So maybe previously there was a lot of rules and regulations around screen time, and mostly kids were using screen time for fun things like gaming and watching movies. If that's the case, and now kids are using their screens for academics, we may need to actually highlight for kids, even in a visual way, screens are available to you during the day from 9 to 5 for schoolwork only. And there may even be ways to, again, visually depict that with a Post-it note, or either maybe like a traffic light, which I've talked about previously with folks, where we're able to kind of show a child when their screens are available for fun versus when their screens are available for academics. I think it's also important to consider that there may be, again, times when you want to restrict access, and it can be challenging. Not every single day needs to look the same. So the rules that you make for Monday might not be the rules that you make for Tuesday, and that's okay as long as everyone is on the same page that rules reset each morning, and that you have maybe a mini family meeting or a mini family get together to talk about what are the rules and regulations for Monday versus Tuesday, or what are the rules and regulations for Monday through Friday versus Saturday and Sunday. So I think the important thing here is to be on the same page, to be very clear with your expectations, and again, to think about previous rules and regulations and how you might adapt the current situation to what the principles that you were trying to enforce previously. If your previous thing was I don't want kids on screens all day, every day, and now you're feeling the same way, it's important that we think of other things and alternative things for our kids and teenagers to do. So rather than just telling them to get off screens, we may need to actually tell them what to do, what to engage with. Great question. Hopefully this is helpful. So another question we have coming in here is, how do you prevent the relationship with caregivers or siblings from becoming highly transactional or really more kind of this work boss kind of phenomenon, right? That's a really great question, and one that I think a lot of parents will be curious about. And the first thing I like to tell parents about this is that it is actually incredibly important for kids to learn the rules of transactions in a therapeutic and safe way with their parents before they learn these rules with a teacher, a boss, a coach. And so while, again, I think it is important for parents to have opportunities to have chores or other things that their child maybe doesn't earn a reward for, again, based on the culture of your family and what works and feels comfortable for your family, but also maybe setting aside one or two chores, one or two tasks that really are highly rewarded to show your child how this works. When you do something for me, then this is what happens when we're in a behavioral contract. And again, to be honest, we are all in behavioral contracts to some degree. I'm in a behavioral contract with Child Mind Institute, right? Where as long as I do my work for the next 2 weeks, then hopefully I'll be getting that paycheck in a couple weeks. Again, these are lessons that we want kids to learn with their parents before they learn it with a teacher or with a boss. We also want to make sure that, again, kids are understanding the importance of intrinsic motivation. And in order for your child to come in contact with intrinsic motivation, the good feeling that they get from doing hard work, truth be told, they actually have to do that hard work over and over again in order to come in contact with the intrinsic motivation. So the more and more that we maybe use some extrinsic motivation to encourage and build on these patterns, build on momentum for kids, the more and more they're going to be able to, as I said, come in contact with the intrinsic motivation, and then the extrinsic motivation can be reduced or gradually decreased across time. So it's a really great question, and one I know that's very similar to the questions that people will bring up about, is this bribery, right? And I want to be very clear, because I know we have another question coming in about bribery. How do I not bribe my kids to do things, right? And what I can tell you is that bribery is reactive. It's not proactive, right? And so what we want to try to do with kids is we want to be as proactive as we possibly can about behavioral contracts from the start. I don't stop doing my work and then go into my boss's office and say, listen, I haven't done work for a couple weeks. But now if I do work for the next 2 weeks, I want that bonus. That's unfortunately just not how it happens. You can't negotiate reactively on a contract. You can negotiate from the start from a contract, though. So if your child is saying this many chores for this much money, right, these negotiations can happen up front. Again, as long as you're comfortable with it and have discussed this with the other adults in the household to start. But bribery, again, is something that is reactive. It's waiting for your child to misbehave and then all of a sudden offering them bells and whistles. That's very different than deciding before you go into a situation with your child proactively, I know this is hard for you. Here's the reward. Here's the paycheck I'm going to give you for putting out that hard work. And I do think it's important for us to consider that kids doing their work from home is hard work. Just the same way that parents were not designed to be teachers from home, kids were not designed to learn from home either. And so the amount of energy and effort that they're expending to stay on task, to follow through without the typical guidance and support that they traditionally have from teachers and other school staff is a challenge. Kids do deserve to be rewarded during this challenging time for their efforts and their hard work. Great questions here. So another question that's coming in is, how can parents balance remote working with homeschooling? And I can really just want to stop and validate your experience of just how challenging this truly is. So I can give all sorts of ideas and suggestions. I first just want to empathize and validate just how challenging this balance can be for caregivers. And kind of regardless of the work, whether you're in a very intense situation or kind of more of a mild situation in terms of your work, finding any time to get away from your children to engage in work is going to be hard. They are hungry for your attention and always want to be with you. You're very fun and very exciting, so of course they want to spend that time with you. And I know a lot of parents and caregivers that I've been talking with have also expressed to me some guilt that they feel about not being present for their children when they feel like they would like to be. And they're right there physically present with them. I think we want to make sure we first and foremost take the guilt out of it and realize that these are unprecedented times. We have to be kind to ourselves, kind to each other. And that does mean dropping the bar just a little bit in terms of expectations. There's no way that you can be present for your work 24/7 and be present for your family 24/7. And just exactly like you've learned to balance those things in the past, you will learn to balance those things in this new norm. It's going to be very challenging. It's going to be really hard, and it might not be a perfect science each day. I think it's important for parents to decide whether or not they're trending in the right direction, meaning did they get a little bit more done today than they did yesterday? And if they didn't, do they think it was still better than 2 days ago, right? We know that when progress is not always linear, it kind of ebbs and flows, but if it's trending in the right direction, that's what we're looking for. And we want to make sure that, again, it's trending in the right direction and we're keeping our expectations clear. It's going to be really important for parents to also be clearly communicating with their children's school, their teachers, their school staff to determine, is there any leeway to these assignments? Is there any opportunity for me to maybe do a little bit more work on Monday evenings when I have less work and hand these things in on Tuesday afternoon after my video conference calls, if that's okay. So I think clearly communicating with teachers and school staff about expectations, what's possible, what's not possible in terms of modifying assignments, that's something. I think also thinking through if you have a partner available to you or you have community resources available to you, thinking about how you can stagger things, how can you layer things so that maybe your kids are all on a video conference with the neighbor's mom who is reading them a story while you're doing your video conference call, and then maybe you're the one reading the story on the next day when that parent needs to be juggling some work. So again, thinking as creatively as possible, thinking about your outside resources as much as you can, and again, just being really kind to yourself, knowing that there is absolutely no way that you're going to be able to manage all of these responsibilities at the same time given the same intensity that you were previously. My 8-year-old daughter is very smart, but nothing motivates her. Her teacher tells me the same thing. Nothing positive or negative seems to work. She's in play therapy, but doesn't open up. It's a really, really great question, and you are not alone in terms of trying to figure out what motivates your child and what really is meaningful and pertinent. I'd say first and foremost, I'm a big fan of preference assessments, or just trying to think creatively about the things that your kid does enjoy spending time doing. And those things might be typical, they may not be typical, but trying to invest a little bit of time and energy in thinking about, what does my 8-year-old actually spend time doing? So when she's getting to do the things that she likes doing, What does that look like? Is she all up in TikTok? Is she all up in Instagram? Is she the kind of kid that doesn't really do the social media thing yet because she's only 8, but she does love, music, or she's really invested in arts and crafts? Again, I think we want to think creatively about what's motivating to her, trying to meet her where she's at, and then decide, is there a way for us to insert ourselves there, whether it be with attention, whether it be with the tangible that she wants and needs in relation to her activities or her desired preferences. Is there a way for us to kind of throw ourselves in there? I think we also want to make sure that we are opening up opportunities for discussion with kids so that we maybe create more situations in which we learn more about what they like. So asking your child to allow you to sit in their room while they're playing a game or chatting with friends, or going out of your way to kind of join them during their favorite TV show, even if you don't really like that TV show, to try to find out a little bit more what they think is funny about it, right? There may be other aspects or offshooting aspects of this that we can use as reinforcement or rewards. And again, thinking, is this a kid that likes to have a lot of say or a lot of choice in what goes on in her day? So is she the kind of kid that instead of earning tangibles like screen time, she's the kind of kid that wants to be able to earn staying up 10 minutes later? Or she's the kind of kid that wants to earn being able to decide what you have for dinner that night? Or maybe she's the kind of kid that wants to earn being able to maybe she's really into gardening. Maybe she's really into thinking about, making an ant farm. These are all things that a child needs you for, to some degree, and a way for you to insert yourself, not just to say, oh, how cool these activities are, but also to think about ways that you might creatively now reward your child for good behavior using some of this new information. Another question that we have coming in that's very similar here is, what are some non-TV, non-sugar, non-toy rewards I can give my child, right? It's a really great question, and one I think that parents are constantly, again, struggling with or trying to think creatively about. I think that, again, the most meaningful part of a reward is it actually serving the function that the bad behavior, the problem behavior was previously functioning as. So if your child previously was whining a lot and you think that was getting them out of work or delaying, is it possible that you could reward your child for doing their chores quickly by letting them out of one? So if your child does 5 chores, maybe if they do 4 quickly and efficiently without arguing or without being asked, then you do the 5th one. Not forever, but for that day. So they feel that their hard work or their effort is being rewarded in a way that's meaningful for them. It's giving them more time with their friends or more time with preferred activities. I think, again, letting your child stay up a little bit later or joining your child in a preferred activity can go a long way for folks. So finding a way to make sure that you play a game with them. They get to decide what you do for family fun night. They get to decide what movie you all watch, even if it's not maybe your favorite movie. Really, really great question. I think we have maybe one more question coming in. Let's see here. Yeah, so how can I get my child to comply without rewards? Is that too harsh? I don't want her to be spoiled. So it's a great question, and again, very much in keeping with, I think, the themes that we've already been talking about today, which is that these things that we're talking about do need to fit in with the culture and the themes of your family. You do need to talk about your partners, talk to your partner, your other caregivers about what makes the most sense and what feels the most comfortable. You want to make sure that you maybe have a combination of things that kids are automatically going to do without rewards or prefer without an allowance or something like that. And then also having a list of chores or maybe more highly demanding things or more challenging things that we do reserve rewards or that carrot for, if you will. And keeping in mind that these are the types of things, extrinsic rewards and motivation can always be gradually decreased across time as kids feel the ownership of their hard work, but that we may need to give them a little bit of those extra rewards, think creatively about ways to get them over the hump of compliance so that, again, we can build on that momentum. Really, really great question. And again, we'll be here for you regardless of the phase of things. So if you end up feeling like you maybe went a little too heavy on the rewards during this period of time, tune in. We can always talk a little bit more about how to gradually fade those things or to make your child a little bit more independent in following through with demands versus having rewards. So really, really great. Thank you so much for all of your questions today. Really appreciate this, and also, hope that this is helpful when we're thinking again about rewards and being creative. Remember that the most important part of a reward is for your child not to satiate on it, for it to be meaningful and potent to them. So thinking again about what your kid likes, meeting them where they're at, and trying to, think about, again, ways to incorporate that in. I know we've been talking a lot about thinking about maybe making a garden, maybe making a new, maybe making a new aquarium, maybe thinking about a cool scavenger hunt that your child actually helps you set up for another adult in the household, thinking about making videos for other people in the family, thinking about making a video for extended family members that you get to go back and forth on. I know previously it was all the rage to make the freeze videos on Instagram. Going back to that and allowing your child the opportunity to do that with you, even if you don't feel like you have the energy or the wherewithal to do it right that second. Your energy, your devotion to them, and your willingness to do things a little bit more creatively is going to go a long way. Excuse me. So, in closing, I want to thank you all again for joining me. Again, we very much hope this was helpful. And remember, we're here every day at 10 a.m. and at 4:30. We look through your questions daily, so check the post for the topics for our next live. The Child Mind Institute is here to help with mental health and parenting needs of this coronavirus crisis, no matter where you are. We have resources to help, from daily tips to consultations to gold standard telehealth treatments. Go to childmind.org/coronavirus. Please be safe, and thank you so much.